Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if I were to tell you that $75 million in counterfeit bills have come to the US from one country alone, would that concern you? See, it concerns me. And I started to look at this. And we've talked about some of this stuff in the past. And we've talked about some big scams that come through. We've talked about counterfeit coins quite a lot, especially from various Asian countries. We look at some of the counterfeit coins that come from China. We look at India as an actor. But there are some countries that are very good at counterfeiting not just US currency, currency across the board, but they were so good at creating currency that could fool banks and actually ended up having to go to the Secret Service for a very, very careful review that they were called super notes. Now, these super notes were not just for one single run of $100 bills. Matter of fact, every time the Secret Service came out with a new one, these actors would create better and better and better counterfeits. I was reading an article about it that stated that the Secret Service was so concerned about this that they actually had kind of a side pull. It was a non thing, just something that was there, seeing how quickly it would be before this national actor was able to actually counterfeit these bills. So I'm going to be talking about this a little bit today. I'm going to be showing you some graphics, some representation, give you some ideas of the general notes. I'm going to talk to you about two primary cases, one being North Korea and the other one being Peru. I'm going to talk about the counterfeits that have come from these two national actors, why it's such a big deal. I'm going to talk about the difference between greed, making money, and economic destabilization that can come from this, and why it should be a concern to all of us in the stacking and collecting communities. I'm finally going to wrap up with a little bit of information on how you can do some counterfeit detection. And I'm going to be showing you the Federal Reserve website, some training courses that you can take if you have a small business, as well as those who just want to understand more about money. Now, I've recently sent a request out to the Secret Service. I'm waiting for a response. Hopefully, I can get a response from them. If you're from the Secret Service and you happen to see this, please check my email and get back with me as soon as you can. I would like to further this conversation. All right, let's dig in. So I want to start off in 1989. In 1989, there were already a bunch of confirmed cases of counterfeiting from North Korea. Now, see, the counterfeiting had been around for quite some time. We look at this and we had found a cache of $100 bills and $20 bills that were found in the Philippines as far back as 1994. Now, this is nothing new. We've seen counterfeit bills, but we're talking about ones that are so good that the banks had to send them to the Secret Service in order to be identified. This means that a lot of the detection processes that you will normally see in a bill, the security strip, the printing, certain elements, the blue and white fibers, the various printing items, were all being met by this national actor. So what national actor am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about North Korea. Now, in 1989, there was a massive shipment that was uncovered in a Chinese bank. In fact, it was such a big deal that the Secret Service reached out to our partners across the globe and said, you need to stop dealing with this particular bank. And they froze assets from a lot of high-end actors, and it caused a lot of issues. Here, a few years later, 2005, there was a massive sting in Las Vegas, Nevada, again, pretty close to home. In the mid-2000s, somebody by the name of Frank Barroza would come in from Canada who would create a counterfeit operation. You'd also find Wayne Dennis just a few years later who would create an operation and have quite a few really good, solid $20 and $50 notes. 2016 was a massive sting that was done with approximately $30 million in counterfeit $100 US bills from Lima, Peru. Another sophisticated read happened in 2019, where we're talking about millions of dollars over the course of the next couple years. And then once again, in 2022, another $15 million sting coming out of Lima, Peru. So we're talking about two primary state actors, North Korea and Lima. Now, when we talk about this, we're used to this, right? Coin collecting, stacking. We see things from North Korea. China is a huge distribution chain of fake monies that come across, especially we're talking silver, gold. In China, the gold market's so bad that they talk about the only thing that's real there is your mother. Everything else is fake. It's counterfeited because it's so bad that it's become a national epidemic in China. Russia has really been big with money laundering. So China and North Korea would utilize the Russian connections there to launder money all throughout Southeast Asia. Again, transit points to distribution points for global distribution. And then Peru came on with a very significant counterfeiting scheme tied to notable links within East and West Coast United States, as well as Mexico and Canada. Now, why are these big deals? Well, because from 1989 to 2008, Korea was kind of the center hub. In fact, as you'll see in this graphic, the bills were so good that Secret Service agents had to go through and really look at the micro details of the bill. There were very, very minor printing errors in these particular bills, such as this little area, this gap that was located here, or the thickness in lines where this line shouldn't be that thick, or maybe perhaps even non-existent. The details that were wrong were so small that it was very, very hard. Now, why was this a big deal? Well, it was a big deal because they were utilizing the same intaglio presses that we were utilizing at the time. So what does that mean? Well, if you get the paper combination, the fabric right, to where you have the fibers, you have the security items, and you have the printing done so well, and you're utilizing the intaglio press that actually allows you to raise the ink off of the paper. One of the major tells that'll happen if you're used to money is the tactile sensation. And utilizing this intaglio press allowed them to utilize that tactile sensation because it was printing the same way that our money printed. So not only did it look right, it felt right. And a lot of banks and a lot of tellers will tell you that the number one way they identify it is through the look and the feel of the bill. Now, coins, it's a little bit different, right? You see something that's silver and you can tell whether it's silver or not, usually by look. We'll pull things out. We'll pull magnets and things like that out. And we have various items, and you'll see we have trade dollars here, and we look at markers and things of that nature. And sometimes you'll get silver products in, like this ASC that happens to be magnetic. So we have ways of checking this within the coin community as well. But these bills were so good that it took the trained professionals months of investigative work to actually be able to identify what was going on. Well, not only is this a big deal because it's talking about thousands or millions or hundreds of millions of dollars, we're talking about it becoming from state actors. So we're talking about the 80s. We're talking about Kim Jong-il, Kim Jong-un. We're talking about political diplomats, people with contacts across the globe. We're talking about connections with Russia, India, the IRA. There were so many tied connectors that this ring became a massive criminal organization at a national level. These became major things, and these weren't just frustrating because they were disrupting or people were trying to gain actual money. Remember that as you're doing this becomes a type of financial warfare. Trying to disrupt a nation's currency is extremely important. There's other ways to do that. We've seen this from the North Korean actors in the realm of cyber warfare, right? Disrupting, stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from an online gaming site or hundreds of millions of dollars from a cyber Bitcoin exchange just a few years ago. These are major actors and national actors, and these are things that really need to be paid attention to. Now, when we look at the Peruvian bills, we look at those bills that came from Peru, we noticed that in 2016, $30 million was found when they were looking at one of the largest busts that had come from this particular one. And again, we're talking about international. Normally, when you're talking international versus national, national, the highest counterfeited bill usually is the $20 bill. However, when we're looking at international, we're almost always talking about the $100 bill. Now, why is that important? Well, because if you remember the conversation I had with you guys just a couple weeks ago, we talked about the fact that 80% of all the Federal Reserve money that we have is offshore. That means that all that money that's overseas, that they are accepting the real money and redistributing counterfeiting money, means that those state actors are gaining access to way more funds. And we were never going to be able to recuperate that. So it offsets the amount of actual money we have. And we don't necessarily know how much counterfeit money is out there. Remember that these bills are so good that they pass many of the normal inspection points, and in some cases, will even fool the machines. One thing that we have to look at when we do this is local engagement. Now, I talked very gently about Frank Baruza out of Canada, who in the 2000s counterfeited a ton. His hiring operation was there. Wayne Dennis. Again, these are small end counterfeiters. These are the local stories that we hear about in the US and Canada and Mexico, right? These are the local ones, but I'm talking about the major state actors. So when we look at this, there's a couple things we have to realize. Number one, the Federal Reserve has gone through, the Treasury has gone through and done redesigns of the $100 bill since 1989. They went from the regular $100 bill to what they called the large head. You remember that? It's the one with Benjamin Franklin with the really big head. And there were security markers that were on that, but it didn't take the Korean actors long to be able to replicate and duplicate that. Then they came out with the colored $100 bill notes. And these are the ones that have all the fancy ones and the reverse ink. And if you look at them a certain way, the ink changes colors, look at them in a UV light. There's so many security features, but even those are being counterfeit, and some of them done very well. So what can you do? What are the things that you can do to protect yourself from these super bills? Well, number one, if you suspect anything at all, the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your security features. So you want to make sure that your watermarks are visible from both sides of the bill, especially in the newer $100 bills. You're going to want to make sure that that security thread is there and that it changes when exposed to UV lighting. You're going to want to make sure you're checking that UV color shifting ink and look at the numbers in the bottom right-hand corner. And you'll be seeing the security features here on your screen. Look at the micro printing. You look at the 100 or the 20 or the 50. You'll see these numbers embedded into that particular item. Again, as I've talked about, because they're utilizing the same style presses that we are, texture is something that's very important. A bill shouldn't feel smooth. A bill should have raised printing. This gives you what they call the feel of money. Smell the paper. Counterfeit money has a very chemical smell to it, whereas regular bills don't have that smell. Smell matters. And the last thing is looking at the serial numbers. Ensure that you have even spacing and matching serial numbers and font with the Treasury seal. If you notice a dark color on the serial number, but you notice a very light Treasury seal, it's a flag. So make sure you're understanding that. If you happen to get a counterfeit bill, number one, do not spend it and do not pass it on. Then you're going to be subject to the same laws that the counterfeiters are. And you want to be very careful about this. So do not use it. Do not pass it on. Notify the authorities. Take it to a local bank. Walk through it with them. Let them know what your concerns are. They'll take it, do an investigation. If your money's good, you'll get that back. And if it's not, then obviously they will notify you of what happened. Try to take all the information that you can and document it. You're going to be looking at things like providing them where, how, and whom you might have received this from. Document the time of day, what store you were at. Did you pick this up in a vendor? Were you doing a one-on-one sell with somebody else? Were you meeting somebody at the local Lowe's to do something that you've done on Facebook Marketplace? If you can, remember license plate numbers and things of that nature. Just make sure you're tracking all the information on how you can do there, and make sure that you're following the law enforcement or the banking officials' instructions that they give you. Again, you definitely don't want to be caught with one of these or try to spend one of these. That can land you in hot water. As I stated in the beginning of this video, I've reached out to the Secret Service and asked them for an interview. I want to find out more that we can do within the stacking, collecting, and community to protect ourselves and to protect each other. What are those elements that we can do? Some of the features that we can do. We have members like Jack Riley that are helping us with coin detection and identifying the counterfeits that are out there. But we need to be able to understand that even though those old 1985, 1989 notes are no longer being produced by the US, they're still out there and they're still considered real currency. So what do we do to protect ourselves from those? And what are those elements that we can look at? So once again, if you're with the Secret Service, or if you're with law enforcement, or you're in the banking field and you have the opportunity to talk with one of them, please have them get a hold of me so we can have an interview and actually share the information to the community. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Frostbyte. I hope you've enjoyed this. If you have, consider subscribing, smash that like, and you know what? I will see you guys in the streams. Take care.